For reaching out to me last week. I know it's such a short notice for most of us here, but we are here now. We made it happen. So, just an introduction of the members. And please excuse me, I'm still kind of under the weather. So, to my far left, we have Congressman BJ Attal. He's a member of this committee. We have Representative Malcolm Omar. He's a chairman for health and wellness. We have our committee member, Representative Diego Camacho. He also chairs the cannabis committee. Myself, currently the chairman for natural resources. To my right, we have Representative Julie Ogo from Rhoda. She is the chairwoman for tourism and commerce and tourism. And then to my far right, we have Representative Vincent Aldon. He's also a committee member for NR and the chairman for PUTC. Um, Welcome to the other members. Oh, I'm sorry, we have Representative Roman Beneventi. He is also one of our newest members for the committee. And I believe we have other government employee guests as well. So again, thank you, Sheila, for coordinating this meeting. And I guess you can take it over from here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Hafide Tiro, Kasalalia Menko, members and honorable guests from DLNR, Secretary. Thank you for joining us, Director of Indigenous Affairs Office. We appreciate this time that you set aside. Thank you so much for your patience while we made our way over here as well. We're so grateful. And so today, I'm really grateful for the time that Chairman Camacho has set aside for us to share information around the Pacific Remote Islands Sanctuary nomination. And this is a hybrid meeting. So Mr. John Gonzalez, we can hear you. If you can mute yourself.
Also be careful, something. card in a knot. How can you break?
And so, Mr. John Gonzalez, if you can mute yourself, that would be so helpful. Thank you for joining us virtually.
Be with my earmuffs.
Okay, there, wonderful. Thank you. Okay. And so today we have guests from the Pacific Remote Islands Coalition. They are a collective of individuals, groups, organizations from Hawaii, DC, Guam. These are scientists, educators, community members, leaders in their communities who have formed a coalition to really push for the advancement of the Pacific Remote Islands Sanctuary nomination. And so there has been a lot of information already shared in many of the communities, and there are many questions, I think, that our people have. And so it is a part of my responsibility as a daughter of the Marianas and also as an active community member to create spaces and encourage spaces like this where we come together and just have this open, safe space for questions, concerns, share experiences. And so this morning we did spend time at the Canoe House. We did engage with the Carolinian Affairs Office, Indigenous Affairs Office, the Community Council of Arts was present, and other elders in the community were there too. So we started our day off like that. And so I wanted to, maybe we can first, I'll hand it over to our guests so they can introduce themselves and where they're from. There are handouts that are in front of you that have a map of the Pacific Remote Islands, some information about the sanctuary nomination process. And that's something we can go over today, but for now, I'll hand it over to Lauren, my far right, and then we'll just move this way and they can maybe start with their name, where they're from, and what organization they represent.
Buenas and half a day, Tiro. My name's Lauren Swaddell. I'm from Guam, but I currently live and work in Washington, D.C., and I'm here to represent the Blue Nature Alliance.
Aloha. My name is Hoku Cody. I am originally from Oahu and Hawaii Island. I come as the PRI Coalition Campaign Manager, and I'm with National Ocean Protection Coalition.
Hello, my name is Amy Kenny. I come here today from Washington, D.C. I run the National Ocean Protection Coalition, which is a coalition of more than 100 organizations across the United States that work together on ocean conservation issues. Thank you for having me today.
Belina mai Mikelo Hanuya Kakua Pauloa. My name is Havane Rios. I'm so happy to be here. I come from Hawaii Island. My mountain is Mauna Kea. My river is Kohakuhau, and the land that raised me is Pu'ukapuwaimea on the island of Hawaii. I come here as an organizer in the PRI Coalition. I'm so happy to be sharing time and space with all of you. Mahalo nui.
Half a day. Aloha mai kako. Inga Gibson with Pono Advocacy. I have worked and met a few of you. It's been some years. I've worked with some of your colleagues on animal protection legislation here in the CNMI and also on Guam. So I'm from Hawaii, Honolulu, and I appreciate the opportunity to hear from you all and listen and get to know each other better. So mahalo nui loa.
Thank you. I would like to give a chance for our community members joining in virtually. Would you like to introduce yourself? Mr. John Bolis Gonzalez, would you like to start? This may. That's all right. This may take some time, so I'll just go ahead and read who is joining us virtually. John Gonzalez, Ms. Diane Pablo, Mr. Mark Robolaman, Mary Urema, and Robert De Leon Guerrero. Thank you for joining us virtually. Okay, so, and then Ms. Eva, would you like to introduce your name, where you're from, and organization you represent?
Test. Oh, Spencer. Buenas, Tanhafade Tiro. Si Eva Agan Cruz Zu. I'm here today representing the organization Manhita Marianas, which is founded here in the Marianas, really looking about aligning efforts in the next generation just to create opportunities of empowerment for our people and looking also at the preservation and perpetuation of our culture and all of our inheritance, which includes our natural resources, just everything that we've been endowed in our islands, and also aligning efforts with the greater Pacific. And so that's why I'm a part of the organizing committee who's bringing the Pacific Remote Islands Coalition today. And Dispensa for the lateness. I'm coordinating for the rest of the day too. So I'm very honored and happy to be here with you all. Thank you for taking the time to listen and to share our stories and our experiences with our sisters who are visiting to learn more about these issues. Sidus Masi.
Thank you, Ms. Eva. And so maybe we'll just go ahead and get straight into the meat and potatoes of why we're here today. And so I do want to maybe hand it off to Ms. Hoku or one of the coalition members to just briefly touch on what the Pacific Remote Islands Sanctuary nomination is about, where we are in the process, a little bit of history, any clarifying information, unless, Mr. Chairman, there's some information you want us to start off with. Okay.
Maybe we can have you guys introduce yourselves as well before we get started, no? Just for our live viewers. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sylvan Iggy Somar. I'm the Secretary of Department of Lands and Natural Resources.
Buenas and half a day. My name is Kalani Regis, and I am the DLNR Coral Reef Restoration Coordinator for the CNMI. Susmasi.
Ross Maglonia, Resident Executive for the Indigenous Affairs Office.
And I am Floyd Mosca with the Department of Lands and Natural Resources. I'm the Special Advisor for DLNR.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Dispensa, Ms. Sheila, and esteemed officers, may I introduce myself for the record?
Ungan.
Ungan Guahu si John Bolis de los Reyes Gonzalez, Lahin Marianas, Zantatan Tres na lalahi, ni man onsyas para umaatitudzi ang manuisinya, para umaadahis ang pumapulan itasita itanukta, two of whom are the U.S. Coast Guard Academy, and one is awaiting, hopefully, full acceptance to the same, but primarily as a son and as an heir to the oceans and our lands from time immemorial to date. And I'm the president for the Northern Marianas Descent Corporation and the treasurer for the Tamulinian Cultural Village, Inc. And Jesus Masi for this opportunity to listen and to be informed and to educate the rest of our Northern Marianas descent, who are the authentic inherited owners of our lands and seas. Jesus Masi.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Gonzalez. And thank you for all of your efforts in our community. Okay, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Ms. Hoku or another member of the coalition to get us started.
Well, aloha. Again, I'm Hoku. I really want to mahalo you guys for all of you for taking the time at such a last minute. Just, really mahalo that for holding space for us today. I just wanted to hold the map up just so you guys could also see it. I know you have it at your desk, but I like to have a visual here. The Pacific Remote Islands is about, it's southwest of Hawaii and just about over 2,000 miles from the Marianas Islands. And the PRI Coalition last year pursued protections for the last two of the three units that were not protected. So the first three were fully protected in 2014. And this last pursuit was to finish the protections of Howland and Baker Islands, as well as Kingman Reef and Palmyra Atoll, to the full extent of the EEZ. In that pursuit, we were finding we had three big asks. Was one, to fully protect all five, so including those last two, to rename the entire place, the Pacific Remote Islands, into a culturally appropriate name, or a traditional place name, and to have it as within a culturally appropriate process, which included community members who felt like they felt that these were extensions of their home. We were asking for them to be included. And the third thing we asked for was for co-management that involved Pacific Island voices in the decision-making process. And when we pursued Marine National Monument designation, we had found there were just some reservations in achieving that status. So in January of this year, we switched sails into a sanctuary designation, where we wrote a nomination and turned it in March, early March. And by the end of March, President Biden had expressed his support to begin the process for sanctuary designation. And then a few weeks after that, there was a public announcement for public scoping to see if this would be something that the community had wanted. That's the really quick breakdown of this proposal. The reason we felt this was really important was a few things, because one, when you look at these islands, they're just right in the middle of the Pacific, in what we call the crossroads of the Pacific, where a lot of our common ancestors had crossed to find new homes. Before we were called Hawaiians or Micronesians or Melanesians or Polynesians. These are the islands that our ancestors had stopped over on their way to their new homes. And we felt that and that was a really important thing to acknowledge. And now we're in a present day where these are some of the last vestiges in the world where there's pristine oceans that are left. And pristine oceans are some of the most ideal marine environments to really gain the best proficiency of traditional wayfinding. And for those reasons, we felt they were really important to protect. And so we're here today to kind of just, listen and answer questions. And if there's any other questions towards these protections and pursuit of co-management, we're happy to, talk story with you as well. We don't have all the answers of what co-management looks like. As Hawaiians, I want to really just say that we as Hawaiians acknowledge that we don't have, while there is historical and archival research that does show Hawaiians present in these islands historically, we are acknowledging that we don't have the real claim. There's other Pacific Islanders that do claim these islands as their own, and they're different groups of islands, and we're saying that those folks should be included in this management structure to make decisions for these places for the long term and for their home, really. So really just thank you for your time. And that's pretty much the shortest breakdown I could give. See if anyone else has anything to add to it. I think that was kind of the breakdown. And yeah, shoot.
Thank you, Hoku. Are there any questions
I'm
right
sure
now
there's
from the
lots,
members? Yep. Yes, Kalani?
When you were pursuing the nomination, was it a petition, or how did you gain support from the community?
So a sanctuary nomination can be inputted by anyone, the community, and the public. It is not a final process. It is the beginning of a process. And so the PRI Coalition, which is, again, as she was saying, we're a loosely organized group of community members that really are just showing up with a deep love for the ocean, came together and found, pulled together some of the best research and citations that we could to back up our three big asks. And we moved it in and we proposed it on the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries and said, hey, we propose this place to be a sanctuary. We hope that, and there's requirements that have to be met in order for it to even be considered a sanctuary. And so through the case statement or nomination, we had tried our best to lay out why that would be important. And some of those I alluded to you in my introduction. And then from there, the ONMS office then goes and looks to see if it does qualify. And then from there, it begins what is the beginning of the process. So right now, we're really in just the early stages of what would be considered the designation process. So the community input and that you're asking for, and where did we seek it? Where this is what the public scoping meeting is about. So there's two of them. So this one is the first one, and the second one will be in about 9 months to a year from now. I hope that was clear. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. And so, you know, when we were at the Canoe House, we had a lot of great discussion. A lot of concerns were shared around fishing rights, Indigenous access, and that's still a lot. There's still a lot of confusion as to what is allowed in a sanctuary, what's the difference between a sanctuary and a monument. And so those are the kinds of questions that we are really open to answering. I do chair the Friends of the Trench, Friends of the Mariana Trench. We did go through the public comment period for the Marianas Trench Marine National Monument, as well as the Marianas Trench Marine Sanctuary nomination. So that is completely different. Today we are talking about the Pacific Remote Islands Sanctuary nomination, and part of this map here does include an existing monument. And so there is a big difference between a monument and a sanctuary. The monument is designated by a president's signature, which is what happened with the Marianas Trench Marine National Monument. The sanctuary process starts with how Hoku was sharing, with submitting a nomination, engaging community, going through draft management plan comments and things like that. But if you can see on the map, the PRI, the Pacific Remote Islands, are really far away from us. So a lot of people have asked, why are we being engaged? And, you know, how about these islands, Kiribati, Marshall Islands? And it really has to do with our status as a US territory. And that was shared with us earlier at the Canoe House, that NOAA, Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, decided to engage with the US territories. But the coalition is very open to including all Pacific Islander voices, and so that's part of the reason why they're here today, right?
I'll add a little bit too. So during a sanctuary nomination process, the nominators usually work closely with the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries throughout the designation. And so what Sheila is alluding to is that we had advocated quite broadly for the inclusion of Pacific Island voices. We weren't explicit towards these folks versus those folks, or those folks over those folks. But within NOAA, Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, they are bound to legal terms in U.S. jurisdiction. So within within the parameters that they reached out. Due to the tempo of this sanctuary process, which has been kind of fast for everyone involved, they were able to justify quite easily to make it to the territories first, because we were asking for Pacific Island voices, and for them it was easy to justify to go out to territories first. And they are working really. They are doing some deep thinking within ONMS to find ways to include other Pacific Islanders that have varying degrees of relationship to the United States, if at all, right? Like whether they're territories or just island nations with relationships to the US. There is an intention for the second scoping period, which would happen in about 9 months to a year. There's intention to go out to other islands within the Pacific that's not just the US territories. And so just to be clear that our nomination is just really broad, that we want Pacific Islanders to vocalize use their agency to voice whether they would like to be represented and whether they'd like to participate in the nomination. And ONMS is doing their best to try and reach those islands and communities. And then where there's gaps, that's where our campaign does our best to try and get those voices on record through the designation process. As the nominators, we try to go out and do outreach and try and get those things also on record with the ONMS.
I recognize the secretary.
Mr. Chairman and members, I know, ladies, please, I apologize if this sounds repetitive, but Indigenous Affairs is here because of its concerns regarding the implications behind this. We look at the tracking of these kind of activities by the federal government. You start off with a monument, it's segue into a sanctuary. And so basically what you're seeing here is most likely inevitable. You're probably seeing come down to the Marianas Trench Monument down the line. So our participation here is basically to make sure that we're going to start asking questions now while we're dealing with areas outside of our purview, the Howland Islands and whatnot. It's safeguarding our interests when it does come time to our side. And so key is traditional fishing, the definitions of commercial fishing. Is it inclusive of our mom and pop little operations that are feeding our people? These are our concerns of the Indigenous Affairs. We are happy with some of the comments that were made out of the organization that's represented here, but the underlying question we still have is, where is the federal government that's actually imposing this? I like to speak to the people that is going to implement, as opposed to I believe in well wishes and whatnot. However, from government to government, I think we should be afforded at least that. Our government should hear the federal government side, what can and can't be offered. I believe in having that truthful discussion. And so, these are fine people. These are scientists. These are people I'm used to dealing with. But, at the end of the day, the policymakers are often the people you're well aware that they see things in different light. And I think it's only natural that I come here and represent our people, the indigenous people of the Commonwealth. If I didn't, I wouldn't be doing my job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Anybody else want to? Go ahead, sir.
I just want to say, I agree.
Recognize Congressman Anand.
Hello, and my name is Congressman Vincent Aldon, and thank you for having this presentation. I'm an avid reader, right? I love history, okay? And I can agree with, Mr. Manglonia's sentiment, because history has shown us that we were not the problem. We've always been good stewards of our land and our ocean, right? And when we were talking about in the 70s about the covenant and all of that, somehow, some way, somebody forgot to mention our exclusive economic zone. And we were cut short. We were deprived, and now we have to go back, and now we got to do this 902 talks, and now we got to talk to the president. And I don't see why I should be talking to anybody when this is my home. And for somebody, 8,000 miles away making a decision in my house, I don't really appreciate that, to be honest. I'm all about Uncle Sam. I love America. I'm red, white, and blue all the way through. But there's no way, I love the Constitution and all of that. I'm all for the First Amendment and sorry, but also the Fifth Amendment, and also, the, right to bear arms and all that. I'm all for that. I've given my life for my country. And now I'm here I'm going to give my life to my islands. Okay, so there is a limit. So I'm very weary with whoever it is that, would be dictating something or proposing something, that has never been here before that might just affect my life or my children's life. Because of how the Constitution or however negotiation or whatever policies or statute it is may be. Okay, so I'm just being frank. So whoever's gonna start making decisions about how we're gonna protect our oceans and all of that, I'm all for it. But a really, really good and proactive approach to letting everybody know, the intentions might be great, but maybe, as history's shown, that somebody across the other side of this planet, will be hijacking everything that belongs to us. And big business, with the backing of the government, because they get a lot of kickbacks and campaign contributions and all of that crap, is affecting my life. And you're taking away from my children's table, so I'm just being honest. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Fadon. Anybody else want to recognize you?
Thank you, Inga Gibson. No, I really appreciate your sentiment and what you also said earlier in our meeting. And just to clarify, none of us are representatives of federal agencies. We are all individuals. My personal involvement was on the Marine National Monument designation in Hawaii, Papahanaumokuakea. And we learned a lot from that. Hoku can speak at length about that because that did involve input from Indigenous peoples, and that was our priority. And we have, I would say, taken it upon ourselves, so to speak, to come here to listen to you. The meetings that are happening this Wednesday, Wednesday in Guam, and then of course Thursday here, AMP, Friday Rhoda, and Saturday Tinian, and then next week in Pongo Pongo. Those were all scheduled by NOAA in advance. So I would just, even although we're not affiliated, I could say I'm sorry for the short timeline and that, some of you did not receive adequate notice and input as we discussed with the governor's office as well. I think this is exactly why we're here, and we hope, of course, that this will be one of many discussions. I hope Hoku maybe will share a little bit about our experiences with the Hawaii Monument because a lot of the same concerns came up. And I'm going to steal Amy's analogy here, and I don't have a sheet of paper in front of me, but it literally is a blank piece of paper, what we're looking at. Nothing is predetermined. There is no outcome, even though there was a proposal put forward with certain guidelines. This is why we're here, and some of the things we talked about earlier about protecting subsistence and cultural fishing practices, and educational opportunities, and job opportunities, and enforcement opportunities. So these are the things that we absolutely want to hear from everyone, and we would expect a lot of the other questions about the federal agencies. Please, on Thursday, they will be there to answer a lot of those questions. And then Amy, if you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I recognize Mr. John Gonzalez.
First of all, I am extremely grateful that I was actually invited after hearing it from backdoor, invites or whatnot. I'm an heir to our ancient owners of our land and sea. My father immigrated to the Northern Marianas to rebuild what was decimated by a super typhoon back in the 60s. He met my mother. I know of no other place than my beloved Islan Saipan. Tauto Gani dan Tauto no Lagwa. I liked the analogy, and by the way, I'm speaking on behalf of Northern Marianas Descent Corporation. Imagine your refuge and sanctuary, your home, being invaded by colonizers. They trespass illegally, unbeknownst to you, bombed you, killed your people, defended other people, dumped their trash and their poison and contaminations and whatnot, left, and then come back and say, okay, I'm gonna come and nominate your farm next door, your lakes and your, ocean next door that your people have been using for sustainable living since time immemorial. And then, okay, 10 years later, we still don't know what's the benefit of a Marine National Marianas Monument. What's the future for us? And if that was not enough, strategically brings respectable ladies, educated as you are, from all regions of so-called diverse America. And we're confused who you represent. And here you are again, I'm gonna claim another part of your lakes and lands and ocean from the submerged lands all the way out. Which, by the way, we'll claim because you did not discuss in the covenant negotiations, but it's okay. We're your sovereign people and we'll claim it because it's a done deal. Imagine your home, your refuge, your sanctuary, your oasis invisibly being usurped from you little by little. And our leaders, where are we? Where are our leaders? Also, no? We must say enough is enough. Are you going to allow your home to be colonized and usurped from right under your feet? Divide and conquer, manye luz and manye nahu. Sa mizu fan matalalam lam matan mizu, na fan bule akamzu. Fan magmata, fanogi fanatso, awite aramasash, rel faluash. Ko sibumata siya fangel, pat meta. Cebu Ferry, debi meta Cebu Ferry. Cebu mama wash, Cebu mama wish, por favor. Ileta, ebo ahaw, ileta. No? And till my last breath, I want so-called motherland United States to treat us with dignity and respect. I hope that's not too much to ask. Okay? Sheila, I respect you. You're my niece. You're my congresswoman. You're my cultural advocate. But I have to draw that line. No, it's my livelihood and I appreciate that. I am beholden to a government that I never had the opportunity to make a decision for. In 1986, when I was a few years old, I became an automatic United States citizen. from our leaders who made that decision. No, I was a member of the second Marianas Political Status Commission. Unfortunately, leaders, I'm hoping that you're going to resurrect that. Former Speaker Atau, I know that you're very familiar with that. We need to really, really do our work and reestablish that second Marianas Political Status Commission, because so much work to be done where our covenant founders and negotiators left off. I had the privilege to meet with Ambassador Hayden Williams time and again, Philip J. Burton, when I was a young, emerging student in high school. There's so much work that has yet to be finalized. And it saddens me that the new generation just come here to our islands and think that Havana Gila, Carpe Diem. No, we need to review those documents, do what's right, and ask the federal government to please, across the desk, as family, if you truly care for our quality of life, treat us with utter dignity and respect. As small as our lands are, there's no recompense. Not $1 billion, not $10 billion, no money will ever pay for the lack of respect and the insults to date. I hope that's not too much to ask. That's what we taught our sons. And when I leave tomorrow, I know we did right because they know. So please, leaders, let's ask the right questions. Let's invoke the covenant. Let's invoke our Section 902 consultations. Ja basta man manafam bulat suhid sin manggimin. Nos pwede kantida lo ifina tinas. Secretary DLNR, we look to you. Our House leaders, our Senate leaders, Governor Palacios and Lieutenant Governor Apatang, and Gregorio Kalili Sablan, our U.S. delegate, work together with us. Talk with U.S. government, work with us, not talk at us. Okay? That's all I ask. And we're here to listen, to understand, to make informed choices, not and never ever more at the expense of our future generation, but fabon. Yalamal. No, nahong is enough. Please. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gonzalez. I believe Mr. Ross Manglonia had a comment as well.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. I just wanted to echo the sentiments of Mr. Gonzalez. Seeing that our islands are very traditional in nature, each and every one of us knows what we has to do. The soul searching we have to do amongst ourselves. And so my best recommendation is for your committee is to push for a joint resolution and request for a 902 talk. At this point in time, I think our people should be afforded that. What do you call that? I think there's a issue on the table, and I think that's the best course of action that this body, your committee, can make the recommendation, then forth to the governor, because I believe that 902 talks is this is grounds for a 902 talk, along the other lines of what do you call the workforce development and whatnot. But this in particular requires their swift attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manglonia. Anyone else want to make a comment? I recognize Representative Julie Ogo.
Thank you, Chairman Camacho. I am Representative Julie Ogo from the very small, beautiful island of Rhoda of less than 2,000 people. And we really appreciate your presence today. I am a freshman representative, and for those for the communities that are not too aware of what's happening with this so-called sanctuary or monument, I am listening in, and I would like to, I'm on your side. Coming from the small island, we depend on our natural resources. We live on the coastline. We just go out and fish for dinner, go into the jungle, hunt for deer and coconut crab to feed our family. The commodities in Rota are extremely expensive, and I'll say maybe 80% of the food would depend with our surrounding natural resources. And we appreciate your advocacy, and we're here to support our help our people, protect our island and what we really depend on for the livelihood for their community. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ogo. Anybody else like to make a comment at this time? I recognize Representative Flanagan.
So, thank you again. So, like I said earlier, I appreciate, and I like what you stand for, to protecting our home and natural resources and all of that. And I'm pretty sure that when the time comes to put everything on paper, it is there's going to be some verbal judoing, and manipulation of documents and whatnot to make it look and seem as if we're doing the right thing for somebody else, and this is my first time to be a legislator, okay? But I'm not so ignorant as to believe that, somebody halfway across the world, they're not going to put some sort of, verbiage into whatever document to state that this is a sanctuary. And the next thing you know, once it's signed, it became an off limits, federal government property that we didn't agree with, but somebody in the last minute wanted to be, Mr. Einstein and slip one past us, and I've seen that on a lot of legislations where your good intentions were well received and you did your homework, but somebody over there, right, put in something that is not supposed to be, right? Now, I don't know if a lot of you understand the natural resources that could possibly change the world. It's sitting out there in our EEZ. If we were to get our 200 nautical miles, we're sitting on a gold mine that we, as the indigenous people, are being prevented by the world government, from harvesting it. And I understand their concern. But then again, like I said, who in their right mind gave you the right to come into my house and tell me what I should be planting or harvesting, fishing or whatnot? A lot of people don't realize that out there, again, there is a gold mine that all these rich nations and all of these big corporations wants to get their hands in it. But thankfully that there are some still good policymakers that are preventing that from happening, because God knows that, we're probably going to be sitting down here with our coral ocean or our coral dead, our fish is overfished. Why? Because some other country comes over here and just takes it. Why? Because they could. And why we can't prevent it? Well, because we can't. Because we're not a superpower, and we're over here with sticks and stones, throwing it at them while they're over here with their guns and whatever. like Malcolm X said, I didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on me. So please, if you should be, how to say, motivated enough to do this, please let's make sure that every document is correct. And before that legislation gets passed, because I'm pretty sure it will, be in the legislation. I don't know if it'll pass or not, but it'll be presented. And that every single word, every single comma, every single period, every single quotation is scrutinized. Why? Because I know that if a comma is placed in a certain spot, it just changes the whole meaning of that law or that bill. And then we're going to end up with a bag of, I don't know what, in our hands while somebody else is raking in the profits. Okay? So I appreciate it and I applaud it, but at the same time, be very, very vigilant, because I'm pretty sure, well, I could speak for myself that I'll be watching. And I hope that whatever documents end up in some senator from the United States District of Columbia is about to sign, that I have exactly the same document that's in front of him. Because I'll be scrutinized. I don't give, almost slipped up. But I don't care if it's 1,000 pages. I will read every single page. And I will make sure that every period, every I gets dotted, every T gets crossed, and every mark gets placed in the right spot. Because we've been had one too many times before. And we're not the only ones in the world that has ever had that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Aldon. I'd like to recognize Secretary Igisomer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I find myself feeling like this is deja vu. I was Director of Fish and Wildlife, Division of CNMI Fish and Wildlife, when the whole monument push came out. And we tried our best to say no to it. We didn't want a monument. We had folks just like you come out and gave us all kinds of promises. Learning centers, tourism is going to skyrocket, lots of funding availability is going to come pouring in. I retired in 2010. I've come back out of retirement some 12, 13 years later, and still nothing is what I predicted that was going to happen. These are empty promises from folks who are not going to be sitting at the table when things really matter. So I get chills when folks come and start knocking at the door. I look at this document here, Sanctuary Nomination Process. I'm a creature of procedure and process. Seems like we're already on process number 3. NOAA's initial review. They're coming out to do scoping hearings next week. What happened to number 1 and number 2? We were not involved in that. Who are all these communities being cited who spoke for us and nominated for our monument to become sanctuary? Are you folks aware that previous administration requested to be removed? Our previous governor here requested to be removed from the list of nominations for sanctuary for our monument. It's been over a year and we've heard nothing. During his early time in office, our current governor reiterated that request to be removed from the sanctuary listing. Still nothing. On March 27, 3 governors of American Samoa, CNMI, and Guam wrote to the President of the United States, and asked him to give us more time, specifically for the PRIA. Yet, they're sending in the troops already. Still no response. What are we supposed to think? You're here to collect information. What are you going to do with that information? Is your voice more louder and representative of our people than ours is? So these are my concerns. Again, it's like deja vu. There's no real consultation. There's no real coordination, cooperation, none of that. It's going to happen. Brace yourself. Again, I asked the question, in that first step, who were the communities that thought it a great idea to nominate these places for sanctuary, to also put the CNMI's monument as a sanctuary? What communities? I think you may have answered that. Folks were working with NOAA to nominate. Did you ask us if we wanted to be nominated?
I'll just, so the nomination that is being talked about will not affect the waters of CNMI and Guam, these territorial waters. So the proposal is only for the waters of Howland and Baker, Kingman and Palmyra, and the other places are already protected as a marine national monument. So there are two different nominations. There's a nomination for the Mariana Trench, and that's different. It's on a different path than this nomination for the Pacific Remote Islands. So just this proposal would not affect the waters here. And I just want to say I'm listening deeply, so I understand the concerns, and this is, you know, helpful for me to listen and learn. So I'm not providing excuses. I just want you to know I hear too and understand the frustration where you're coming from. So they're two separate nominations.
I understand.
Yeah.
And I also shared with you that 3 governors requested more time, specifically for the PRIAs, and nothing has responded to that. There's been no response. And so we feel this is a premonition. It's going to happen. You know, we put in a request to be removed from the sanctuary list for CNMI, and we're not heard. You know, there's no response. It's silence. And then they're sending out folks. Both PRIA and the CNMI monument are on the list. We asked to be removed. We've not heard anything. They're moving forward with PRIA. We can just imagine that they're going to do the same for the CNMI's monument. So it's those kind of things that, you know, there's lack of communication.
So none of us here work for the federal government. So just the letters to the federal government, and I will say from just for myself, when we saw those letters, we did call the federal government and say, you should be in consultation with the territories. We heard that the governor hadn't been informed that these scoping meetings were happening or this was moving forward. And we raised our voice to say you should, or, you know, that kind of engagement, and not just checking a box, not just we have a process and somebody sent a form letter and an email that might have been caught up. Like, it needs to be a conversation, an engagement, you know, understanding and engaging in a more meaningful way than a letter was sent. So again, we're not the federal government, and I hear and agree what you're saying, that we agree that engagement should happen. And we've also raised it to the federal government that should happen. unfortunately, we're not the decision makers here, but we hear you and we agree that that kind of engagement is important. I work with the NOAA Office of National Marine Sanctuaries on a lot of different issues. Again, I don't represent them. I am not a decision maker there. I will say that they are very deeply listening to the comments that came in from the former governor and the current governor and during that comment period. And I think, I don't know when they'll come out with a decision, but I think the reason why it's taking a long time is they are deeply listening. And that doesn't help you. They're not coming and having a conversation with you, but I feel like the length of time is because they're deeply listening. For other sanctuary nominations that were in that renomination, like every 5 years, you have to be renominated into a sanctuary process. In other places, it went very fast because they heard a lot of support from the community, from elected officials, from scientists. So in conversations that I've had with that office, I think they are really deeply listening. I don't know when they're going to give you an answer.
Hold that thought. Before I recognize anybody else, I would like to recognize Mr. Rebalaman in our virtual. I just noticed he's been raising his hand for quite a while. So go ahead, Mr. Rebalaman, we're listening. Mark Rebalaman, you have the floor if you're still there. Okay, I'll just give you some few time to write them down, but we'll move on to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add on to what Amy was saying in response to you, sir. I attended a America the Beautiful Coalition fly-in meeting in Washington, D.C. last month. On April 26th, Tina Sablon and I were in a room with several other advocates for conservation, and we followed up with NOAA, asking them what the status was with the Marianas Trench Marine National Monument, as well as the National Marine Sanctuary nomination. And I can confirm that they said that they are still reviewing the comments from the meeting that happened last year, and they are thinking very carefully on what would be best for the community on how to proceed forward.
Thank you for that.
Chairman, just quick question, please.
Sure, I recognize.
Speaking of preserving and protecting, inquiring minds want to know, what does that entail? What does protection mean? What does preservation mean? For who? For what? For when? For why? And for how? Again, we are open to learning and understanding. And I hope that at the end of the day, that truth, honor, dignity, respect, and tolerance for humanity, for the true, authentic, inherited owners of our oceans and land and seas, are respected and preserved, truly preserved and protected. Sizus Masi.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. No, my recognition.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make some comments or just responses towards some of the thoughts that have been shared. I just really want to thank you guys, each of you, for all of your honesty, and just want to continue to encourage this conversation to continue to be an honest conversation. I want to share sentiments with you as well for your disgruntledness towards America and their distance and their lack of connection to our islands and our oceans. Our islands are small. Hawaii is small, just like you guys. Our oceans are even greater. That does not mean my ocean is your ocean by your shorelines or your shorelines. I just wanted to make that super clear. I wanted to also just provide a little bit more clarity here. As Amy was alluding, it is over here, but more to that, these 5 units, 3 of them were protected to the full expansion without any consultation, without any proper process. They just signed away. There might have been some listening sessions that were given just to help justify why they were protecting it. But through the Antiquities Act, it doesn't require a process. And then this past year, we in Hawaii looked again at these 5 units and thought to further expand these 2 through the monument, again with those 3 asks. However, the sanctuary nomination now puts with the co-management suggestion in the nomination, puts all of these islands into the potential of having inclusion of these voices, of the disenfranchised, of those that are not heard, but those that do know how to take care of their own places and their ancestral knowledge and preserve those rights. So I just want to make super clear that the process itself of allows it to appear like those before. And the thing that sets this nomination apart from others is that co-management is already on the table. It's already in the nomination. And I just wanted to make clear that hearing all those different discussions of invoking the covenant, section 10902, thank you. These are all really great ideas. And please review all 1,000 pages and check for that comma. This is the kind of energy that is needed to craft the mindfulness of co-management that we are asking for as well. And to be clear, Hawaiians are not asking to be part of that co-management. We threw it out there and said Pacific Islanders should be included. And so I just want to be super clear that we are not here to say, no, we're going to protect it. We're saying that you guys should, if you feel so moved to. And I just want to answer your question. What does protection look like? For us as Hawaiians, protections are predicated on more than enforcement. Protections are predicated on prayers, intention, and community. And for us, it's super important that protections reflect that anytime we propose things. And within Papahanaumokuakea, which is a Marine National Monument, did go through an Antiquities Act. We staunchly advocated in the expansion for elevation of Office of Hawaiian Affairs to be co-trustees. And we have seen the benefits of co-management, the ability to have a voice at the table, to have allocated federal funds so that we could manage these spaces as we want them to. These are our ancestral lands. Papahanaumokuakea is very, very Hawaii. And we do feel very blessed that in our pursuit of that, we've been we have that opportunity. And so when we went out for this nomination proposal, and saw that the sanctuary would overlay over all of 5 units, it put everything back into play. And we said, it needs to be co-management. It needs to have Pacific Islanders in it. We're not going to go and ask these guys to come and support this at the expense of their resources, their knowledge, and their dignity. So all of this to say, the consultations that you're seeking and the comments that you are sharing of how things should be run, these are the comments they are looking for in the scoping period of what this is to look like. And then also just to clarify that a sanctuary nomination, as it goes through a management plan and eventually, hopefully, does become a sanctuary, it gets signed by the superintendent of the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. It does not go to the Senate or the Congress. It is not signed by the president. It goes through a very, very rigorous process of community input that is shaped by these comments. And so all of that to say, what they're looking for on this blank sheet of paper that they're coming here today or this week with is to hear whether you would like to have an inclusion in that. And then also, what does that look like for you? If you go onto the website of protectpr.com, our nomination is up, and you can read our proposal of what co-management looks like, and you'll see that it has nothing. We are not proposing Hawaiians to co-manage. We're absolutely saying that Pacific Islanders who feel moved, who feel that these places are their homes, extensions of their homes, we would like them to be included. And so I hope that you do consider that energy, that disgruntledness, that tired of not being included, to continue to think about this place and how you would like to participate and be represented in this structure, because they are listening for it. And I also just want to deeply apologize that the Northern Marianas Trench has become such a, like, I want to say kerfluffle instead of another word, but it is kind of affording. We have no excuses for that. We're not pretending to give you any promises of visitor centers or money or whatnot. We are saying that we are also fighting for funding for this proposal. And the only thing I can promise you is that co-management is in the nomination and it's on the table. And that's really all that we are saying here today. So thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. The floor is still open for anyone that recognized Mr. Igis Homer.
Can any of you on this panel give us an example where co-management really is meaningful? Like, can the advisory folks, because at the end of the day, it's a federal process run by the federal government who are going to make the final decision. Do any of the advisory councils on the so-called co-management, do they have veto power to override the federal government's decision as they go through the process? Go ahead.
I just want to clarify that advisory councils are not part of co-management. We actually do not like, in Hawaii, we don't like advisory councils. They talk at the government, they talk at processes from outside.
So what is the...
And so co-management, it's a clunky word. There's collaborative management, there's co-management, and it can look any way we'd like it to be. For Papahanaumokuakea, there's a co-trusteeship where there's managed by 4 equal entities: the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, State of Hawaii, Department of Commerce, and Department of Interior. And they all equally manage, meaning they all come to the table, and every permit, everybody has to use a manager's permit or extra permits to be part of that thing. And every single co-trustee has to vote in favor of each of those management activities. If OHA dissents, then nobody does it. That's one example we have is within the protection of the Hawaiian monk seals. There is, within the Hawaiian monk seal research program, there is a small incidental management action where they do shark culling for Galapagos sharks, at individual Galapagos sharks. And the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, the Cultural Working Group, as well as the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, has staunchly opposed that since 2010, since they first proposed it. And because of our opposition, this particular program has never been incorporated into the management plan of Papahanaumokuakea. They are still a permitted program that still has to go through a process, which includes asking the Office of Hawaiian Affairs as well as the Cultural Working Group, which I happen to be a member of the Leadership Council on the Cultural Working Group. They have to constantly ask us whether they are allowed to cull sharks, and we keep telling them no. And so because of the no, they have really, really, really restricted parameters with which they are allowed to cull sharks. And it is absolutely one of the most contentious issues we have. Another example of co-management, kind of just like in the implementation side, is called the Keomanu Project, which is something I have founded. What we do is we increase community participation into seabird conservation. So what that means is we get Hawaiians into the field work to give them experience in Papahanaumokuakea that then leads them into pathways of management, either inside or outside the system. More importantly, we are able to gather seabirds and pass them on to community members to revitalize traditional practices of feather work within our traditional ceremonies. So a lot of these ceremonies that we have in Hawaii that you've heard of, that you have gotten wind of, have been using fake feathers, quote unquote fake feathers, meaning they're not from Hawaii. We have, since the elevation of co-trustee of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, we've made a very like large push statewide to get every ceremony on every island, every makahiki ceremony on every island, to be able to use authentic seabird feathers during their ceremonies, which has not happened in hundreds of years due to the federal protections that have also kept us out from not just management decisions, but also the opportunity to take care of these special birds and kupunas, really our ancestors, so that we could continue to use them. Another good example of co-management in Papahanaumokuakea entails the traditional voyaging canoes, being able to sail up there multiple times a year, and they go out there. They go out to certain islands. They stay for about a week or so. And all that comes down to logistics because of distance. They're able to go out there, practice their voyaging, stay on the islands for about a week, do ceremonies. While they're there, they can fish, they can live off of those places, and completely subsist and sustain themselves while on these projects, and then return back to Hawaii, the main Hawaiian Islands in Hawaii, having been able to kind of reconstruct what is a very raw and unfiltered environmental genealogical experience for Hawaiians, through the practice of being able to revitalize holomoana, feather work in ceremonies, as well as just being able to get out there and steward our ancestral places to the degree that we feel is appropriate. And these are the paths we wanted, right? They weren't saying, okay, co-management, okay, you can go here and you can go here. It was, no, we want to do this and we want to do that and we want to do this. And so I just wanted to highlight a few models of what co-management could produce if those are the paths you would like. But again, when it comes to co-management, it's about having the agency to speak about how you would like to be represented and how you would like to participate. And I think that's a really fundamental difference between the proposals before one and then the proposals now. And how does that translate with a place that is almost 2,000 miles away from you? It allows, especially the federal government, who maybe did not have the institutional knowledge of what maybe they never thought to include, but now they will be mandated to have that institutional knowledge, and they will be mandated to include voices that they never thought to or didn't want to before, or felt it was convenient to interpret it where they discluded voices. Now we're telling them you cannot. Yeah, and so I thank you for your time. I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you. John? John? Oh, sorry, did the message from Mr. Balaman come in? No. Okay. Well, yeah. I recognize
Hi. Oh, my name is Floyd Mosca. And as I introduce myself, I'm the DLNR advisor. One of the things that I would like to comment on is that you're here in the Marianas as part of your start of your outreach with regard to the expansion of the PRIA. And one of the things that you're doing, if I'm correct, is you're going out there to get comments from the public, as you should be, as you should get comments from every community member. And I encourage you that if you are going to have a meeting, you let the community know you're having a meeting. We don't know you're having a meeting. We only knew of this meeting today. So if you are coming to get comments from the community, and I'll repeat myself, let the community know you're having a meeting so you can get comments. That's what you're here for, right? Thank you.
Thank you. Would you mind, Sheila, if you? It was kind of hard to read on the mic. And sure, if you don't mind.
Okay. We have a comment from Mr. Mark Rebalman, understanding that it does not affect the CNMI as there are two different nominations. Then Ms. Mary Fem Urena, Hafade Zentrao, how would this sanctuary positively or negatively impact those nearby islands nations who are not part of the U.S., such as Kiribati, a 2012 study on how climate change predicts a shift in impact skipjack tuna mitigation? How would the U.S. connect and manage these lands and waters collaboratively with these nations who benefit from these resources?
Um, so these are great questions. I don't know that I have an answer directly for Kiribati and some of the other islands. So there's a couple of things that I can share. We had heard from past efforts and recently the concerns from American Samoa and how this potential nomination could impact their economy. So when you think about fisheries and the data that we have on fisheries, there's two different ways to look at fisheries data. There's effort data. How many hours are the boats fishing? So you just know how much they're fishing, but you don't know how much they're catching. And there's catch data. And there's two pathways to look at these sets of data. The effort data, since about 2013, but more reliably since 2016, large vessels in the fleet that are fishing with purse seines or the long line. So these are the large boats that are able to travel this far to these waters to fish, carry AIS. So the satellite beacons are primarily put on boats for safety, but it allows kind of a track line of where they've gone. And they're able to see fishing patterns, patterns when you're transiting, patterns when you're fishing. So there is this data set that can look at effort of fishing fleets, both US and international. So if you look at the effort data for US flagged purse seiners, so in this area, there are no active commercial, industrial, longline vessels. The only fishery that is active is the purse seine fishery. There's 9 boats. And if you look at that effort over time in the last 5 years, from 2016 to 2022, and you take the whole US purse seine fleet and you look at how much time, just time spent fishing in this area versus the rest of the Pacific, the boats have spent 0.5% of their time fishing in this area. So 99.5% of their time, these purse seine boats are fishing in other areas. That could be the high seas. It could be other, like the American Samoa EEZ or other countries' EEZs. So about 60% is in high seas, 33% is in other territory, other nations' exclusive economic zones. So for the fishing fleet that fishes in this area is the tuna purse seine boats, and they spent 0.5% of their time fishing in this area. So from an effort standpoint, this area is not very important to the fishing patterns of the last 5 or 6 years. The other way to look at it is the catch. So catch statistics come in very large quadrants, large chunks of the ocean. So when you look at the catch data for these areas, some of the areas overlap and some are inside, some are outside. But still, when you look at the catch data, the fish coming from this area that are then landed in Pago Pago is less than 4%. So from a number of fish landed and taken to the cannery, less than 4% of the fleet's catch goes back to the cannery. So that's the information that is available on catch and effort. And if there's other information, available, that the catch comes from the Western and Central Pacific Fisheries Commission publicly available database, and the effort data comes from AIS tracks under Global Fish Watch that looks at fishing effort. So from this area, the contribution into Pago Pago is relatively small. So just from the kind of fisheries amount, trying to address how this might affect positively or negatively. So then looking at potentially how could this influence Kiribati and their waters, which are adjacent, or in most places you can see the high seas or where it's adjacent to another country's EEZ. So the main beneficiary would be Kiribati. And when you look at the patterns of fish, kind of going in that direction, there's been some studies that show around Papahanaumokuakea that the fisheries are catching more fish along the boundaries of those protected areas. So the catch rates have gone up about 50% if you're fishing really close to that area. So it's showing that the marine protected areas serve as a bank account, an asset, and that the populations are healthier within those boundaries. And the benefit is kind of like your interest on your bank account. It spills over into the adjacent waters. And so in this one study around Papahanaumokuakea, it's showing that the fishing vessels are fishing the line, they're fishing the boundary of the marine protected area, and that their catch rates are higher, meaning that they have to spend less time and money catching the fish when they fish close to the monument. So there's a potential that there could be benefit to the fisheries in Kiribati because of the boundary effect of these protections. That's just, kind of one perspective, but I think it's a great question to look at more closely.
All right, thank you so much. Floor is still open for any questions or comments. Sure. I recognize Representative Hoda.
Sorry. But going back to my sister from Hawaii, no, who are these, other than yourself, I take it, other than NOAA, who else are these community builders? Who are they? Somebody has to have said something and started something 8,000 miles away for this thing to move. Who else is involved?
I will say that we from Hawaii sent a letter to the White House last year. And then we sent another letter when we switched to sanctuary designation and then turned in a nomination. And that's how we got to where we are today. We have had engagements with the federal government, mostly through grassroots outreach, just dry emailing them, or perhaps we work alongside Amy, who has helped from DC, to help us logistically move around DC, but otherwise reaching out to our own senators and congressmen who have been supportive of this effort, but also were really supportive of Papahanaumokuakea. And so I think what I'm ultimately saying is there's nothing sinister here coming from me as the campaign manager. There's nothing sinister here coming from us. I actually just think they hear us because Papahanaumokuakea was such a success.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So do people actually live in these islands?
They are uninhabited land islets, atolls, and spits and reefs. Yeah, just low-lying areas. There is a research station at Palmyra Atoll that is currently privately managed by Nature Conservancy.
Okay, so nobody lives in these islands.
No.
So just completely uninhabited.
There is U.S. military base on Wake Atoll, and it is, I think, at most 125 people who are just there part of the year for their basic operations.
Well,
so
so
otherwise, no residents.
There's no island nation natives that live on any of these islands.
Correct.
Do any of these island nation, claim any of these islands?
There is a substantial claim to Wake Island from the Marshall Islands. There is evidence of Johnston Atoll, Palmyra being part of the ceded lands package in Hawaii. There is very clear claim by Howland Baker and Jarvis Island to Kiribati. So there are historic connections there as far as substantiating them and finding the sources. Most of this is just from talk story from people, and we have Dr. Kekueva Kikiloi has done some archival and archaeology research in PRI years ago, and that's where he was finding some of the stuff about Hawaii. So all of this to say, the Colonizers did a really good job in having us forget, and we're doing our best to try and pull it all back together. It's a very obvious connection that these islands have to each and every one of us as crossroads, again, as crossroads. And we are doing our best to change that narrative from that we have from when we look at these places, we think military, distant, federal. We're really trying to change that narrative into bringing it back into the fold of our community.
And hence the Antiquities Act.
We are not using the Antiquities Act to pursue this. Again, in 2014, the Antiquities Act was used, as well as in 2009. But we are not using the Antiquities Act here. We are using a sanctuary process, which requires community input.
Okay. So the people that in Kiribati, right?
Yeah.
Did they have a say on your Holland and Baker Island?
Well, I wouldn't call them my Howland and Baker Islands, but I would say that I do not have the power to tell the federal government that they have to go consult with these places, but we are doing our best to advocate that they push as much as they can to get all those voices in. And as, again, when I said in the beginning, as nominators, we work closely with the Office of National Marine Sanctuary to make sure that we find these gaps and provide things on record so they know, so that they can do a good job in making it a thoughtful process. So part of that in this particular instance includes making sure that we show them, substantial claims by these islands and that they need to be included.
Who did you show?
Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. So according to the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, they went to the territories first because it was easy. Legal jurisdiction says these are Pacific Islands that are within their bounds to talk to. The other ones, Marshall Islands, Federated State of Micronesia, these guys they want to include them in the second scoping period. They were not able to include this on the first one. We are not the federal government. They were mandated to expedite this process it'll take about 2 years, where normally sanctuary nominations take 3 to 5. And so we're doing our best to make sure that we're putting on record that what Pacific Islanders do have connections, that it is put on record that they do have it.
Okay, so because my concern is, so let's say, for example, that there are indigenous people in Kiribati that lives there, correct? And if they have a strong claim to Holland and Baker Islands, right? Like through archaeological evidence, right? And then your organization, right?
Not an organization.
Or what?
Community member.
Okay, so your community members nominated this Holland Island Baker, whatever, right? To the federal government, the Marine organization, right? That they should be placed under this, your Pacific Remote Island Protection, right?
We're saying
so.
they should
Why
be
would not you guys go over to Kiribati and ask them first? Hey, we would like to put Holland and Baker Islands under the Pacific Remote Island Conservation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of, because my understanding, you just went straight to the Fed with the Marine Sanctuary, whatever, and bypassing Kiribati. Did I get that wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I think I want to clarify here that Kiribati is actually closed off from visitors right now. We're not able to travel to Kiribati due to COVID. It's still restricted. So we're not able to actually travel there. The other part of it is a lot of these places that are not within U.S. jurisdiction will require the Department of State to have a conversation with the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. And so those things are out of our hands. But we, again, from the campaign standpoint, we're advocating for their voices no matter what.
So,
Can I just further clarify real quick? To further clarify that these 5 geographic areas are all U.S. territories currently. So they're currently U.S. territories, although other islands do have historical claim to them. So that is why the process is the way it is right now.
And I totally understand that, we're also considered U.S. territory, right? But yet, at the same time, I don't appreciate Uncle Sam coming over here to my house and telling me what I should be doing and what I shouldn't be doing in my house. So we could be U.S. territory, whatever. But at the same time, these are local people. These are their land. This is where they were born and raised, and their family died and were killed. And, they didn't step over somebody else's property and start dictating what they should be doing in their property. So I'm totally understanding that, yes, we want to protect, but did we go ask them first that if they want to be protected? Instead of just, I think that you need to be protected, so here's how I'm going to do it. And that's.
Thank you, Representative Fadal. If I may, I know due to time constraints, we have two more questions on the TV. So if we can get to those questions first, and then if we can entertain at least one or two more questions on the floor, appreciate it. If somebody can go ahead and feel free to
Okay,
read those
I'll
questions out.
read it out.
Thank you. Thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Okay, the two questions were posted by Mr. Robert De Leon Guerrero. First one, does the monument prevent any future interest from DOD on natural resources? First question, just want to ensure it is protection for the people's limited resources and still given accessibility to the islands. That's the first one. Second, also, does the community have a voice or seat on that co-management, especially with this scale of the proposed Pacific Remote Islands Natural Marine Sanctuary?
I'd say we'll stick to the first two, please. Thank you.
So the question about Department of Defense, I don't have a good answer to that one. The Department of Defense has broad jurisdiction for national security purposes. So I can't answer that, in terms of what DOD will do or say. These are very remote places. So in terms of sonar testing or, kind of military exercises, I think it's highly unlikely in the current state of things that much would be going on there with DOD, but I don't know. In terms of access to these places, for some of them, they are former military bases that are a mess, that need to be cleaned up, that aren't safe for people to just go. So there are some restrictions for those reasons. And then maybe Hoku can mention the co-management pieces.
So with co-management, there is an example within Papahanaumokuakea, which is also going through a sanctuary designation process. So a sanctuary overlaid with already an existing monument is also happening in Papa. And there is a co-management structure there called a co-trustee structure, where there's 4 entities that oversee the stewardship of that place. It's the Department of Commerce, Department of Interior, State of Hawaii, as well as the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. The 4th entity, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, recently was elevated in 2016, making it a true co-management of science and natural and science and culture knowledge systems being integrated for the elevation and betterment of the place. Does it mean that the other? It does not. So the co-management really is only pertaining to those particular areas. So it doesn't bleed over. Like if Papa has co-management, that doesn't mean that Marianas also had co-management. It doesn't mean that Pacific Remote Islands also by default had co-management. Then so you have to propose for each of those areas. Now, perhaps in the Marianas Trench, I'm not sure if co-management was in the nomination, but it is in the Pacific Remote Islands to have inclusion through a co-management structure that would have Pacific Islands in the decision-making process. Now, what that structure looks like, whether it's a co-trusteeship where there's three government entities plus, a fourth or fifth entity that would represent Pacific Islanders, that's to be determined by the public process if that is what people choose. And I think to the other top point, there's a question there about will it give accessibilities to the islands? When it comes to co-management, I guess the short answer is yes. There's a lot of caveats because of military cleanup, because of historical impact that does need to be addressed, as well as future plans or stewardship is why that have to also be laid out. But otherwise, the type of accessibility, the frequency, and the nature of access all gets determined by the co-management structure. So will they have still access? Yes, but more importantly, you'll be able to make that choice of how accessibility looks like for this place. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that, answering those questions. You want to speak? Go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. And because we are coming up on the 2-hour mark and many of our guests have already departed, I really want to express my gratitude for you hosting this meeting, having these kind of spaces where we share our concerns, ask questions, try to resolve conflict, heal from past harm. It's all really important. And I too am on the side of protecting our homeland. I am from here, born and raised. My history is here, my family is here, my future is here. And so being in a unique relationship with the United States is complex, right? And we're talking about conservation, illegal fishing. There's militarization, there's plastic pollution, there's decolonization. There are so many large issues that we're facing. And here in the Marianas, we love our home, we protect our home, yet we have the abandoned IPI, we have the abandoned La Fiesta, we have increased militarization on our islands of Tinian and Guahan. And all of that is a part of this conversation, right? For self-determination, for indigenous representation. And so that's why I'm happy that we're just here talking about it, because we need to let it out and we all need to decide how we want to move forward. When we talk about the future generations and what we are stewarding for them, right? What is our responsibility? And so I'm grateful for Chairman Camacho, you and your committee making time to bring us together here. I am helping coordinate efforts so that we can hear from all sides, not just the organized commercial fishing side. We can hear from conservationists from other Pacific Island nations, other indigenous communities, what's happening in their homes. I just returned from Palau last week and we met with the local people there who have said because of their protections, they are seeing increased access to fish closer to the shore, making it better for their own people. However, I am well aware that Palau has a different political status than we do. We have a different political status than Guam, American Samoa, right? And on and on. And so I am very vocal about my stance on self-determination efforts, on bringing our people together so that we can decide on what our future will look like. Because asking for permission all the time or having, military's presence increase at such a rapid rate that's so destructive needs to be talked about. And so I'm grateful for this time that you have set aside for us to be here. The public scoping meetings that are being hosted by NOAA, the federal agencies that we are always bringing up in our discussions, will happen Thursday, 6 p.m. at the American Memorial Park. And then on Rhoda and Tinian the days after. And so we'll also be there engaging with the communities. I know that it's really challenging to reach every person on our community. You can be on the radio, in the newspaper, on social media, and you will still hear people say, I did not know about it. And so, we're all just trying our best to do what we can for our homeland. And I'm so grateful for you and our chairman, Angelo Camacho. Thank you so much for just making time and space for us today. Jesus Masi.
Thank you guys. Well, with that being said, on behalf of myself and the Committee on Natural Resources, we want to thank you guys for your presence, and we hope you enjoy your stay. We know that you guys are leaving tomorrow morning, which is the reason why we had this meeting today. We just wish you guys a safe flight back home, and just keep in touch, and hopefully we can have more meetings like this so that we can further discuss more into depth. Also like to thank the viewing public. This is a live session. Thank the participants on the other end of the screen for taking the time out to hear us out. And once again, thank you guys all. Appreciate it.
Thank you for taking the time to make space for us to talk story with you as well. Thank you.